In order to make your own scatterplot, there are a couple key steps that we're going to need to follow. The very first thing we need to do is to decide which of our variables is going to be the independent variable, going down here, and which one will be the dependent variable, which will be our y. And remember from the last video, when you're deciding which variable is which, the independent variable is the one that we're thinking is going to affect the other one. So you have to ask yourself, is the number of days going to maybe affect the height, or would the height affect the number of days? It doesn't really make sense for the height to affect the days. We're saying, okay, after so much time, is that going to have an impact on the height? So days is your independent. It's the one that's probably going to be affecting the other. So we have our days down here, and that leaves our height over here. So you're going to write your variable on each axis. If there are units attached to it, write those down too. So this is in centimeters, and that's just days. If you're unsure which variable is which, by the way, a helpful hint, almost always, your x is going to be on the left and your y is going to be on the right when they give you a table. That's just kind of how it's done. So the hardest part of the process is deciding which variable goes where, and then making my tick marks for each side. So I need to make tick marks for my days and for my heights. Now, I could go by ones. There's nothing that says you can't just always go by ones. But if you think about it right here, to go from 0 all the way to 35, that's a lot of tick marks. I can get maybe to 10 or 12 on here. I mean, it's just not going to be very practical to do that. So I want to scale my tick marks so they go up by a certain amount. And that way I can conserve a lot of space that way. The biggest thing to watch out for is that your tick marks need to be the same distance apart. They need to scale evenly. The biggest mistake I will see kids do, and don't write this part down, they'll do 0, 10, 15, 22. They'll just use whatever numbers they give you right here and be like, oh, here's my tick marks. You can't do that because we went up by 10, and then up by 5, and then up by 7. That's kind of a mess. They need to go up by the same amount each time. So I have to ask myself, I'm going from 0 to 35, and I'm going pretty through that whole little area there. I'm probably going to think that going by 5s would be a good idea. I could do 0, 5, 10, and so on, and that would work out pretty well. Now, if I did that, again, don't write this down. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. I'm going to stop like right there. That's going to be a pretty silly looking graph because it's really scrunched together. I've got all this nice space right here already on the picture. I might as well go every other tick mark. So my 0 would be right here. 5 would be there. We got 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. And I guess maybe I need just a tiny bit more room here. Sorry about that. I'm going to put a 35 on the end there. So that's my tick marks for days. Notice they're evenly spaced, and they go up by the same amount each time. Now, just because we decided we're going to go by 5s on this, doesn't mean we have to go by 5s on this guy right here. We are allowed to choose a different scale for our y, but the thing is, once we choose it, we have to stick with it. Notice on this one right here, it starts in the 40s, but then it goes up pretty small. If I were to go by 5s right here, 5, 10, 15, 20, what's going to end up happening is I'm going to have all my points pretty close together, because these numbers aren't all that far apart. Now, if I went by 10s or something like that, it's going to be even worse. So what I'm going to do here, because I really have nothing from 0 to 42. When I do this with 0, I'm going to just have a bunch of empty space that I'm not using. An option you have is to put a break in the graph, which basically means you put a little squiggle, kind of like this, like a little zigzag on your graph. This allows you to start and pick up wherever you want. So I'm going to start at 40, because my number started right at 42 right there. And from there, I'm going to go up by, let's see, I got to go all the way to 57, 42, 44, 46. I'm going to go by 2s after that. Because now that I'm up to 40, like this space is all wasted. There wasn't going to be any points there anyway. Now I've got a little more room to make my graph more detailed. So I got 42, 44, 46, 48, and so on. You're just making your tick marks here. The one thing you have to be careful about when you do a break in the graph like I did right there is you can sometimes have a misleading, like it may not initially look like it's to scale because we skip those numbers right there. So really all this stuff would be way up here if we were to actually go by ones. So when you see a break, just be careful to analyze what's going on. Once you have this in place, we're going to go ahead and plot our points. Now this is just plotting x comma y. So for instance, we had 0 comma 42, we had 10 comma 46, and it's going to keep going like this. So I'm just plot your points right here. I'm going to probably fast forward this part in the video so you guys don't have to watch me plot a bunch of points. So when you guys get to your points plotted, again, the one thing I just want to point out here, like if, for example, my 22 comma 53, that was not going to be a whole number. That's 22.5, halfway between, so I went like a little less than that, and I just put it in between the 52 and 54 tick marks. You just eyeball it like that. Your scatterplot should look something similar to mine, though. It's often nice to have a title on your graph right here. So it doesn't really matter how you do it. You could do height of plant versus days, or days versus height of plant. So height versus days might be an okay title if you were to do something like that. And there's your scatter plot. I have one more example in this video. I want to show you how to do the tick marks, and then I'll do the same thing where I fast forward through the point plotting. On my second problem right here, we're dealing with much larger numbers. We're apparently talking about some company, the year versus the profits that they're going to make. Plotting these values would be just terrible. I mean, having to have tick marks with these giant numbers and everything is just not a pleasant problem. So I'm going to show you a couple of good shortcuts you can use on this problem. First of all, with my years right here, a nice trick you can do when your data is in years, because I don't want to plot points in the thousands, you can do years since blank. So years since whatever year you want. So in my problem here, I'm going to do years since 1970, because that's my first year. So what's going to end up happening then if I do years since 1970? This is 0 years since 1970. This is 1975 is 5 years since 1970. 1980 is going to be 10 years since 1970, and so on. So instead of having these ugly big numbers, if I just call my X right here years since 1970, so since my starting year, that allows me to use nice small numbers right here. So this would be 15, 20, 25, 30, 31, 32. And in my profits right here, these are giant ugly numbers. Instead of doing profit just like this, I can do my profits in millions, because these are all in the millions of dollars. And then I can make this like 11.8 million. That's 11,800,000, so 11.8 million. This one isn't going to be exact. That's too many numbers to bother writing, so I'm just going to call this 12.1 million, round a little bit there. This would be 11.4 million, 10.8, 9.4, again rounding a little bit there. And I'm just turning these all into nice numbers right here by chopping them. And then as long as I say it's in millions, so this would be profits in millions. Kind of abbreviating there. Yeah, I'll just write it out. That's going to get in my way. I'm sorry. You just have your title right there. So your profits in millions. Just for lack of space, I'll draw an arrow right there. So that's my y-axis. And now I just have to decide on my scaling. So if you look at your years right here, it seems like going by fives, it's actually kind of similar to the last X set we had. It's probably going to be a good idea here. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll have year 0, then I'll skip, let's see, 5, 10, 15. It's always good maybe to test it out like I am now. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Yeah, that'll fit. So this is going to be my years down here. And then I'm going to have my millions. Now, if you look at this guy right here, those are pretty nice numbers. I don't even think I need to do anything with that. I'm just going to go by ones right here because they're pretty well put together. Like, it's a nice list. No scaling is really required. It's not like there's a wrong way to do these problems. So if you decided, well, I want to make this go by twos, or I just want to do it in millions and not even do this 11.8 business, that's fine. It'll work just as well. Just make a decision that makes sense in the context of the problem. You didn't have to do it this way. And once you have this, I'll do the first point just to show you guys. It's 0, 11.8, so that will be up here. And you just pretty much keep going like that. 5, 12.1, and so on. So I'm going to fast forward right now and show you guys the finished problem. So here is my finished product according to the picture I had. Kind of ran out of room here on the end again. Notice that these tick marks at the end were a little closer together because they were farther apart. We definitely have a negative correlation going on right here, and it appears to be a pretty strong one based on my data.